Hi folks, how the hell are you? I sincerely hope you're as happy as I am. Because, what a week the last week's been in the world of sim racing and, computer racing. It's just fantastic. rFactor 2 is getting some goodies and updates, and this, the BMW M4 Class 1. Look at this beast! Oh my word, look at that thing. You've got updates to Automobilista 2 by Realism Studios. Loads of bugs fixed, things feeling even better in that. We've had a little update from QNOS for a set of Corsa Composizione, I think. We've had a massive update, if you're hellbound on destruction, for Wreckfest as well. It's just amazing. And, well, this video is going to be about this car. And also about why Studio 397 and their simulation rFactor 2 is just phenomenally amazing sometimes. So, we've got this beast of a car. It is the car that wasn't to be, unfortunately. This car has been developed from the ground up by BMW. And it's in their computers, it's in their simulations. They were ready to go, but then the rules changed for this class. And now it's in a class of its own and unfortunately will never be built. But BMW, because of their close working relationship with rFactor 2, decided to give... Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get out there and drive the thing whilst we're talking, because you've got to see this thing go. It's unbelievable. But they've given all of their data to Studio 397. So even though the car does not exist in the real world... I can't speak. Real world. I'm so excited. It exists in our simulation here. How lucky are we? And for free! Studio 397 did not offer us this car. They gave it to us. Now, just before we go out, I'll just let you know, it's on a basically stock setup. This car drives really well on the stock setup. But I'm taking it here to Nuremberg, and I've made a few tweaks to it just because it's Nuremberg. So I've got a setup here where I've basically just lowered the rear rebound on the dampers just by a couple of clicks, just to help me out when I'm coming off throttle around corners. Lowered the anti-roll bar by one click, and just increased the diff lock a little bit so it's nice and stable. It's usually at 85. I've set it to 100. Let's get out there and drive. We've got, I think, 2.5 litres of power, a ridiculous amount of horsepower, and DRS, and more downforce than, well, it's an incredible amount of downforce. Let's get that pit speed limiter off and let's take this thing out. So this is where Studio 397 and rFactor 2 are just amazing. We've got a car here that's not going to exist in the real world, but it does exist. You know, BMW have done their work on it, they've designed it, everything else. It could exist, but because of the change in the rules with, I think, DTM, who have now gone all GT3, this car is not going to exist. However, they are working on the GT3 version of this car, which will also be coming to the game. Look at this! 6th gear, no lift. I'm flat out around that corner. The downforce on this thing is fantastic. And if I want a little extra power, get it in a straight line, hit the DRS button, and the thing goes even faster. I'm clocking up to 300 kilometers per hour down the large straight here at Nuremberg. You know, which is it's about 186 point something miles per hour. And it's just immense. And if it wasn't for Studio 397 and BMW, we wouldn't have this car at all. But we get to experience this. They've not just given Studio 397, you know, the license to use this car. They've given them all the data. All the CAD data, all the engine torque data, all the aero tunnel data on this car, simulated lap times. And BMW do use they use their simulation quite extensively in the way they design cars, and trained drivers, all sorts. And rFactor 2, still my benchmark when it comes to just purely driving in a sim. There's just nothing like it. And I say in quite a lot of my videos, whether I'm doing a video in rFactor 2 or Automobilistic 2 or ACC, I've said several times, you know, I've never driven pretty much any of the cars that I get to drive in these simulations. So I can't tell you how realistic or not it is. But when you go onto Studio 397's webpage and see the news about this car, and then there's a video there with an interview in which Paul Jeffries from Race Department is interviewing the general manager of car development at BMW. His name is Rudolf Dittrich. You can look him up on LinkedIn and you'll see exactly who he works for, what he does. And he's there, you know, Paul's asking, why are you choosing to release this to rFactor 2 and Studio 397? And he turns around and says, because of the accuracy of the representation of the car in this simulator. That, to me, even though I've never driven the car, I'm gonna go along with that being the validation for this car in this simulation being the most realistic version of it you could get. You know, it's just, and you know, where rFactor 2 is just fantastic is, you know, down to pure driving. You know, if you're interested in just purely how a car drives, how fast it can go, what you can get out of it, what you can do with setups, you know, you're not even bothered about going for a race, you just want to take the car to a track and see what it would be like there, then that's where rFactor 2 is just absolutely fantastic. The way this car feels is amazing. The steering in this car is reasonably weighted, I would say. It's quite heavy. Not quite as heavy as, say, the original Bentley Continental GT3, not the 2020 edition. That's got slightly lighter steering, but it's quite well weighted. The downforce is phenomenal, and it's fast. I mean, my first lap in this car that I clocked, so that's the first lap without even trying. I know the Nordschleife pretty well, but the first lap without really even trying, I clocked a 6 minutes 19. 6 minutes 19, that's without even trying. And then I made those changes. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, I also made a slight change to the gearing. I made the gears longer by a couple of clicks, just so it can hit as high a speed as possible on this straight here. And if we turn that on the DRS now, we should achieve about 300 kilometers per hour. It's taught me something about DRS as well, because I haven't mucked around with a lot of cars with DRS, to be honest. And I was very impressed because I didn't know much about it. I thought you hit the DRS button, it opens the wing. You close the DRS button when you go for a corner, and it closes the wing. I did not realise, and I'll try and show it here, when I lift off, come up the accelerator and the DRS closes up again by itself, automatically, as soon as you come off the accelerator. That's brilliant. Obviously, if you're used to DRS, you'll probably know that. But, I mean, the way it responds, I'm having to be quite careful here. Obviously, I'm not going to hit amazing lap times because I'm chatting away, so my concentration isn't fully on my driving. But the cornering speed of this thing is phenomenal. Doesn't particularly, I'm being very careful with the curbs here because it's not particularly fond of curbs. It handles them all right, But you don't want to hit a big curb at high speed, because with all of that aero, you're going to break the seal, and you could end up with an off-track, or possibly more than just kissing the fence. Look, flat out there, quite quickly. I've got unlimited DRS, so I'm going to turn it on here. I'm going to stay flat over here. Got the DRS back on. I'm flat out. And the brakes. Oh my word, the brakes. I've noticed with a lot of the BMWs in rFactor 2, and with other sims as well, like BMWs and ACC, Automobilicity, that the brakes on these things are phenomenal, but I find them really impressive in rFactor 2 here. This car comes with a default brake bias, let's just check it, down there in the left hand corner, of 50-50. You don't see many cars that come with the, the default setup of the brake bias set at 50-50. That gives you some idea of how well balanced this thing is. I honestly do think this is absolutely phenomenal. And for Studio 397 to have, given us this for free. I mean, the GT3 version, pretty much flat round there. The GT3 version, we are going to have to buy. My money's going straight down on that. 100%. If it's anything like, well, I mean, it'll have less aero than this. It'll have also traction control and ABS, I assume, being a GT3. It's just phenomenal. You do have to be a little bit careful with the accelerator pedal as well, especially now I've locked up the diff a bit. Keeps it quite stable off throttle coming out of a corner, but you have to be careful coming out because there's a lot of power back there. I think I've been so excited driving. I think it's about 500 brake horsepower, something like that. I could be wrong, but holy, it's such an amazing drive. And I'm nearly flat through there, slight lift, nearly flat though. It's driving this car, it made me want to do some comparison laps, so I tried out the BMW M8 GTE, and that needed a little bit more tweaking in the setups to get around the Nordschleife. Oh, and excuse me there, I've ruined the carousel. Like I said, I'm not going to get any perfect laps whilst I'm chatting away. But we've got this. Monza has just come out. I haven't bought it yet. I am looking to treat myself to that very soon. Laser scan Monza. In fact, that brings me back to the interview with Rudolf Dietrich. He was saying another thing that he loves about rFactor 2 is the laser scanned tracks. Now, their in-house simulator is custom, but I think it is based on the rFactor Pro code. Could be wrong there. If anyone knows any better, tell me in the comments, but I've looked up a few interviews with him, and he's sitting there in front of the screens talking about it, and it's definitely some kind of version of rFactor on the screens. And that's just where rFactor 2 is. Sorry, I know I'm waffling here, but there's so much to say. It's just where rFactor 2 is fantastic. He starts talking about the accuracy of the laser scanning in the simulations, and the fact that they can do things that they can't do in real life. So for instance, they can just do, in real life they couldn't take the car out, say in the morning, then decide to change a load of things about the setup, which would take a lot of time, and then go back out there, and by that time the track has evolved, the surface is changed. With the simulation, they say it's very useful because they can go out on track, try the car out, bring it back to the garage in the simulation and just click a few buttons to change the setup, and take the car back out, reset the track to the exact same conditions, so they know exactly, you know, what effect these changes are having on the car. Because obviously with real life, once time has elapsed for those changes to be made, the track's going to evolve, so you're going to get slightly different results which are not based on just what has happened with the setup. Those brakes, just phenomenal. rFactor 2, or Studio 397 rather, have just released their new roadmap, and in there they're talking about another new car that they're bringing out. Ooh, just that was a bit scary. Just touched the outside of the left rear on the grass there. Just touched it. Felt the car slip a little bit. Whew. But oh, I'm in petrol head heaven here. It's just fantastic. Like I said, it made me want to try out a few comparison tests. So I took the GT3 out, the BMW, and tried that round here. The times are quite a bit higher, but I need to do a lot more setup work. For instance, with the default setup, if I came over this crest here and wasn't very careful, even if I stayed on the power or lifted, even worse if I lifted, back end would be gone. This thing, whew, it's as tight to the track as a well-rehearsed band is on the ending to a big ending to a song. It's just, you know, I'm banging down through the gears, they're braking, and it's just handling it. But the drive on this thing is sensational, and I've got to say, well done, Studio 397. This thing is phenomenal. Thank you so much for. Yeah, just got on the curbing on the outside there, a little bit too close to it. But well done. You've made this silly little YouTube fella here very happy, I've got to say. And the other thing about rFactor 2 is it made me, you know, just for comparison as well as the BMWs, try out the lap with a few different cars from both GTE and GT3. And one of the things I love about rFactor 2 is how completely different the force feedback feels from car to car. You know, cars have got different weights to their steering, so you can use the force feedback multiplier. And I've got vibrations going through my steering here because I've locked the brakes a couple of times. I think I've got a slight flat spot on one of the tyres. Cars, if you set the specific car-specific force feedback multiplier to the same amount, so for me it's usually about 30. If I set that to the same amount exactly for all the cars, they've all got different weights. They all feel completely different. The front engine cars feel very different to the mid-engine cars. The high downforce cars feel very different to cars that do not rely on that sort of technology. It's just phenomenal. By the way, talking of Monza, if you want to know some information about Monza, I have not done a video on that yet, but go and check out Mike's video from Sim Racing 604. He's already done a video on Monza. I'm looking forward to trying out Monza, just because, I mean, Monza's never even been a huge favourite of mine, but driving tracks in rFactor 2 I've never been to these tracks. I'm pretty much bet. You know, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'd bet that they are the closest you're going to get in any commercially available racing simulator. You know, I've in one of my last videos about rFactor 2, I was comparing the development curve of Automobilista 2 from Reason Studios to the development curve of rFactor 2 from Studio 397, and I was saying that I was optimistic about the future of rFactor 2 because I see the development curve of this sim gradually accelerating. It has been slow in the past, but it's accelerating. And you know, there are still problems with the AI, certain bits of the UI and things like that, and of course then there's the loading times, and the loading times can be absolutely abysmal, I must say. But the thing is, once you've got oh dearie me, there we go, I knew that was going to happen. Have I done any damage? Oh yeah, a little bit. I can feel that through the steering. I've got a little bit of damage there. So it's time to wrap this up, I think, now that I'm losing so much concentration on clattering walls. But what was I saying? I'm loving this so much, I really have completely forgotten my train of thought. And I forgot to turn my DRS on as well, so this is going to be a slow lap time. But, God, this is fantastic. Yeah, so yeah, development curve of rFactor 2 and the loading times, that was it, loading times. Once you've sat there, you've waited for the thing to load up, you know, it's taken long enough that you've picked up your guitar and played a tune on it by the time it's loaded. You get in and you just drive. And you think to yourself, feck me, that was worth it.